Welcome to Front Office Pros, brought to you by the Front Office Pros, Steve and Joe. As of this recording, we are less than 50 days to kickoff, which is hard to believe, but we've been going through divisional breakdowns. We went through the AFC, now we're in the NFC. And today we have a special guest making his first appearance on Front Office Pros, which is none other than Justin Henry. He is the Justin Henry Show. And Justin, thanks so much for coming on to the show today.
Absolutely. I appreciate you guys having me on. Love talking NFC West. You see, I got the hat on ready. I had to come. I got the Niner stuff in the back, so I had to come prepared, baby. Hut, hike.
We're excited to hear what you had to say about your 49ers. So as of last season, the NFC West standings, this is how it went. Your 49ers, Justin, went 13-4. They were the NFC West division champions. Seattle Seahawks went 9-8. They made the wild card, the surprise berth. Led by Geno Smith. Then the LA Rams had a disappointing season, went 5-12, and the Cardinals were in the cellar. They went 4-13. So based on what has happened this offseason, what is your guys' prediction on who will be the NFC West division champion?
Well, I see this 100% Niners running it back. Like, there's no team in the NFC West right now that's strong enough to compete with the Niners. I don't care what the Seahawks did in the draft, going to get a whole bunch of offensive weapons. The Cardinals are playing for Caleb Williams. And then the Rams, they're a team it's kind of fallen off. They spent all their money and all of them picks, FTP, spent all them picks getting to the Super Bowl. So they're kind of in a semi-rebuild, end of their prime. I see the Niners being the class of this division. And then the Seahawks seem like the kind of team that can at least put together a strong run, be there, potentially be back in the playoffs like they were last year. But this overall feels like the Niners division, and it ain't really close.
Yeah, I got to agree with you, Justin. I think just from, the roster build and the talent that they have, I see the 49ers running it back. And, I think, Seahawks and Rams could make things interesting, but I don't really see them contending with the 49ers and with the division here.
So a lot of what I've done so far when it comes to predictions has been chalk. So I feel like there's always a shakeup somewhere, somehow. And so I don't know if I say love it, but I'm feeling the Seattle Seahawks as the NFC West Division champions. I know it might sound crazy, but when it comes down to it, who's the quarterback for the 49ers? We've got a quarterback roulette. I don't know who's going to start. You got, Brock Purdy. Is he coming back with the UCL? Is it Lance? Is it Darnold? I don't know. I just don't know what's going on there. And I literally like what the Seahawks did this offseason, bringing back Bobby Wagner to be in the middle of that defense, the captain of that defense. Should never have left Seattle in the first place. And then you've got bringing in guys like Jackson Smith and Jigba, Zach Charbonnet coming into the offense. They're really making that offense more well-rounded, giving options for Geno Smith. So there's got to be a shakeup somewhere. I can't exactly fall like last year. So that's my shakeup.
It ain't happening this year. Not in the NFC West. Seattle, for everything that Seattle does well, and I know you have concerns about like the Niners quarterback situation. The thing is, this Niners defense is the elite defense in the NFL. It's top 2, top 3 at worst. Like if you're counting the Philly and Dallas defenses is up there as well. No matter how you splice it, it's a top 3 defense. So this Niner defense has been one of the more historic defenses over the last decade, being able to shut down opponents. So the ground game is there, elite offensive weapons. It really, we could start at quarterback and still have a successful season for the 49ers. So I get it. Like normally there's a shakeup. If anything, it would be at the back end of this division when you're talking Rams and Cardinals. Because the Cardinals, if they do get Kyler Murray back and he goes out there and he plays at an efficient level, like they might be competitive in games. I'm not going to say they're going to win a whole lot of games, but they might be playing to win a few games. New coach there. And then the Rams, you never know which direction they go. Matthew Stafford's elbow, Cooper Kupp coming off the injury last year, and then they lost Jalen Ramsey there in the offseason. So there's a lot that's, kind of fluid with this Rams team and how much that they truly want to win. I think the Rams are a better team than the Cardinals, so that's where I give them the edge there, but it wouldn't be surprising to see the Rams at the bottom of this division either.
So going over to the wild card teams, do you have any wild card teams coming out of NFC West, either of you two?
Yeah, for sure. I think Seattle's a wild card team. They're a team that they were in the wild card last year, and they're probably going to be either 6 or 7. They're going to be hanging in there. But I feel like this is a team that can go in there and really at least be competitive against most other teams, right? Like when you look at the top 7 teams in the NFC's weak. Like, that's where I think that they have the advantage. They're a strong football team, well coached. They run the rock. They can pass the rock now, especially when you get another piece like Jackson Smith and Jigba. And their defense is always solid. They're one of the best home teams as well. So when I look at Seattle, I feel like there's a lot going on with Seattle as far as, like, if they were in the NFC South, we'd be talking to them as the division winner. If they were in the NFC North, we'd be talking about them as a division winner. It's just they're in the NFC West behind the 49ers.
Yeah, I agree. I do have one wild card team. That's the Seattle Seahawks. No surprise. I think they get, run it back into the playoffs, with the additions that they've got. And just like Justin said, I mean, there's not too much competition elsewhere with these other divisions, outside of like the NFC East, as far as wild card teams, the NFC is extremely weak.
Yeah, it's crazy the difference between the NFC and the AFC, but I got the 49ers making it, all right? I got the 49ers getting a wild card spot. I think, like you were mentioning, defense is great, and the addition of Javon Hargrave too in the middle of that defense, I think that will do really well. That pairing with, and they do have Ark Armstead go in and out, I'm trying to remember that the name's escaping me right now, but Kinlaw, Javon Kinlaw, he's been not so good, for a former first round pick for them. So bringing Hargrave in there, he's one of the better defensive tackles in this league. So he should really continue to bolster up that defensive line, which already has the defensive player of the year with Nick Bosa last year. So where it's at when it comes to the 49ers defensive line. So for the teams that missed the playoffs, we've got two teams making the playoffs out of the NFC West. How do you see it going between the Rams and the Cardinals? Who gets third? Who gets fourth?
Yeah, I think the Rams handle business, and I think they're one of those middling teams. Like, we could see them be a 6-11 type team, or maybe we're seeing them be like a 10-7 team. They're somewhere in that range of outcomes, right? And it truly depends on the health of Matthew Stafford's elbow, because we saw even with him and Cooper Kupp last year, they had the connection's still there for whatever elbow problems Matthew Stafford was going through last year. He's had another year to recover. His defense has probably had some of that shock value that came last year from their drop off has probably went away. And so I expect this team to come out and still be competitive. They're paying Matthew Stafford a lot of money this year, and he didn't want to take a pay cut. So he's kind of playing for his career at this point as well. I think that they're going to come out firing, and I don't expect them to be like top of the West, but I could see this team being very competitive and kind of surprising some people. So I got them third in the West right now. The Cardinals, I don't see it for the Cardinals at all.
Yeah, I got the Rams third as well. I definitely agree. They're somewhere between, like you said, that 6-win team or, contending with the Seahawks for this wild card. I do think they could surprise teams. I mean, they still have Sean McVay. It all depends really on the health of Matt Stafford. And if he stays healthy, like you said, him and Cooper Kupp, that connection is just, electric, and nobody seems to be able to stop that. So I do think there is a chance they could surprise some people, but, we'll see there. And then, Cardinals, they're at the bottom. And I don't see. They're definitely like the worst division in the division, or worst roster in the division. So I don't see them doing much else there.
Yeah, when it comes to the Rams, I have them third, but I don't feel that confident about it because I actually think the Rams are in a lot worse shape than you guys are saying. I think that team is on the verge of imploding if it already hasn't started to implode. Trading away, Jalen Ramsey, cornerstone that defense. You hear rumblings that Aaron Donald doesn't want to play for a low-performing team. There have been rumblings of his retirement. So is he a guy at the trade deadline? Do they trade him away, coming down here? I could see it happening. And with Stafford, I'm concerned about his elbow, but I'm concerned about his back. Joe, we've talked about this a little bit. I thought he might be on the verge of retirement because of that injury. One bad hit. It could really do some damage for him. So they just don't have a lot. They've got Cooper Kupp. That's it. Who else do they have to work with on the receiver front? Not really anybody. And then do you really rely on Cam Akers, who was in the doghouse, not in the doghouse? This is going to be a true test for Sean McVay. Everyone wants to crown him and thinks he's the next best thing. And he's done great. Don't get me wrong. Last year was tough. This year is going to be a really true test. Can he, corral this team and make it into a verge of a playoff team? We'll see. I have my doubts. But then with the Cardinals, they're last, and they might be one of the worst rosters in football. I think they're going to struggle. I think that they're probably going to – who knows when Kyler Murray will start? I think that's the big question that you brought up, Justin. where, when does Murray come back, from that ACL injury? And if he does, then I have a little more confidence. But this is definitely going to be a rebuild year for them. Now, I am curious. You did mention something earlier, Justin, so I want to get your guys' thoughts on this because, Joe, you've been saying this for a while now. Do you think it's possible that if, let's say, the Cardinals tank for Caleb Williams and then they're going to be on the move and trade Kyler Murray, do you think that's possibly in the foreseeable future for the Cardinals?
I think it's more hype than anything, right? You just look at how bad the roster is for the Cardinals and what they've done, like just giving up a lot of their players to let D-Hop go, J.J. Watt retired. It's like a lot of the cornerstones that we were used to seeing there for the Cardinals over the last 3-4 years are gone. And so the only thing left, Cliff Kingsbury's out of there. So really it is just Kyler Murray. And then the roster's terrible. So when you think about that, you're like, okay, they probably can make a move. It's not Kingsbury's guy anymore. That kind of seems to be the direction that this franchise is heading. If Kyler Murray starts week 1, though, he's also going to be playing for his job and probably his place in this league in the next few years. And so, he's had some success early on, dealt with the injury, and then now coming back to a team where he has to prove he's not just a gimmick quarterback, a system quarterback, that he can actually play this game at a high level. And I think he can. So he has a lot to prove, but they're probably going to be the worst team. I can see the trade happening absolutely, especially with the way that this roster is built up right now.
Yeah, that's where I tend to agree as well. If they did want to go the Caleb Williams route, we've seen them do that after taking a quarterback, early in the first round before with the Josh Rosen situation, just wasn't their guy. New coaching staff comes in and, they take Kyler Murray. So I could see with this new coaching staff, if Kyler Murray's not their guy, it was Cliff Kingsbury's guy, they want to get Caleb Williams at the top of the draft. I think they could do that.
Yeah, that contract will be tough to trade, meaning he just signed an extension, but I'm sure that they could get a decent haul just based on the quarterback landscape. Some team will want to, acquire Kyler Murray, I would think. So that'll be a really interesting storyline because not only do they have their first-round pick, but they also have the Houston Texans' first-round pick as a result of that Will Anderson trade in the draft. So you're talking about possibly 2 really high first-round picks next year. And that can really change a franchise if they get it right. So that'll be interesting. So transitioning over to the fantasy football side, because that is primarily what our channel is about. We're going to be going through each team in the NFC West. I'm going to ask the guys for a sleeper for each team. So let's start off with your 49ers, Justin. Who is the sleeper that you have for those guys?
Well, I could get in my bag and really talk about Trey Lance. I talk about Trey Lance a lot, so I'm actually going to stay away from him. Let's just go with Brandon Ayuk. And I think that his value right now in fantasy drafts is way too low. It's a guy we're undervaluing because he's not the quote-unquote number 1 on his team, but he provides more of like that Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, T. Higgins type of wide receiver 2 value, and I don't think a lot of people realize this. Last year, he finishes the wide receiver 15 in PPR leagues, and currently he's going outside of the top 25, top 30 in most drafts. He has the name that doesn't – he's not, that big 6'4" frame. He's not catching 15 touchdowns. He didn't have 1,500 yards, so we're all kind of expecting him to just be like the secondary piece to George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, CMC, when really he's probably the best receiver, full receiver on the team. And so when you think about it in that aspect, this guy's a former first-round pick. He's playing for a contract. There's a lot with Brandon Ayuk to love, one of the best pure guys that can get separation in the whole league, and we're discounting it because there's other names on the team. So I think Brandon Ayuk is one of the best values in fantasy football right now.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear you say that. I mean, Brandon Ayuk is a guy I like a lot and been targeting the last couple of years, in drafts and stuff. The 49ers team was really a tough team for me to come up with a sleeper here, but I'm going to go at the quarterback position and say Sam Darnold. We'll see what happens. Brock Purdy, I don't know where he's at as far as, recovery, as far as being able to start week 1. With that UC injury that he had. So if he's not potentially ready, I think Sam Darnold, we'll see what happens in training camp between him and Lance. But if Sam Darnold gets a chance to start, I think he could be pretty good. He's never had weapons like this on offense. And I think in Shanahan's system where he doesn't really have to do too much, I think he could be good for fantasy.
Yeah, when it comes for me, I had a hard time as well because a lot of what the 49ers have is pretty established, right? You can't say McCaffrey's a sleeper or Kittle's a sleeper, right? I mean, these guys are established players. So I went with Elijah Mitchell. In the event that Christian McCaffrey could possibly get injured, this could be, I think, one of the better handcuffs in the entire league. And running backs are, of any position, are the ones who get the most injured. So and who knows, maybe they'll strike, and then Elijah Mitchell will be the start because CMC will join the strike for running backs. But more often to say, I think we know that in the Shanahan system, running backs, it's very, very friendly for running backs, especially for fantasy. We've seen the likes of Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert now in Miami, but you've seen a lot of success in that system. So to me, getting that handcuff with Elijah Mitchell, I think makes a lot of sense. Before I move on to the Seahawks, I'd be remiss. I have a 49ers fan right here. I got to ask, what's going on with the quarterback situation? What can you tell our audience? Is it Purdy? Is it Lance? Is it Darnold? I saw your face. I'm thinking not Darnold. Where are you at? Where are you at with that?
So when it comes to the quarterback landscape for the 49ers, I think Purdy's the guy. This is the guy that the organization wants, and I think it's not because it's the guy that they really want to trot out there. It's who the fan base trusts. It's the guy who took them to the NFC Championship last year, and it's a guy who probably comes at a pretty reasonable price tag, right? Brock Purdy's contract, seventh round guy. It's like you don't have to pay him as much this season, and when his contract does come up, even if he plays at a level, it's not going to be. If Trey Lance explodes, it's a whole different level than if Brock Purdy continues to play at this, higher end Jimmy G type level, right? He can push the ball downfield. He makes the correct throws and he can run the offense like he needs to. And so I like Brock Purdy. I think that he's a good option. He's a tier below the potential of Trey Lance. And I think that's what everybody, the Niners fan base, if you're still interested in this Trey Lance thing at all, you're hoping that you get to see the potential. I get that there's a whole list of outcomes. Trey Lance could be terrible. We haven't seen him on the field. He can get re-injured. There's a lot that remains a question mark with Trey Lance because we've only seen him on the field 5 times in his whole career. And so when I think about potential output, that's the guy I want to see. We've seen Brock Purdy. We've seen Jimmy G. I want to see what this offense under Kyle Shanahan looks like with all the weapons at the disposal. And if it's trash, it's trash, right? And then you can find another quarterback that can come in and be a normal pocket passer in this offense. But with the dynamic ability that Trey Lance has, with the amount of draft capital that was invested to get the guy, to just ship him out for a second, third round pick, to me seems a little criminal. And so there's been a lot of talk this offseason about how Trey Lance has developed and has looked a lot better. George Kittle's talked him up. A lot of his teammates are saying he looks a lot different than last year. I can't wait to see this quarterback competition because I don't think Sam Darnold stands a chance in hell over there to actually make the starting role or be the number 2. The part I do think about Sam Darnold is this, is if the organization decides that Brock Purdy's their guy and he's healthy, I can see Trey Lance being shipped off by week 4, week 5 to a team that's struggling for a low round pick, for like a second or third round pick, just because they're going to be like, you know what? We don't want the controversy. We can run Darnold as our number 2. Brock Purdy's our guy. He's healthy. His elbow looks good. Let's get some draft capital out of him now and not have Trey sit for a whole year. That's where I can see that happening. That's my piece on the 49ers quarterbacks.
Ooh, that's good. That's good. We needed that. Here's the thing. Yeah. When it comes to Darnold, I do. One thing I do think is interesting is I believe he took less money to go to San Francisco. So whatever conversation Darnold had with the front office, he must have felt a certain level of confidence that it made sense for him to go there. Now, I mean, we see even guys like Mariota who were first-round retreads, right, go to Las Vegas, for a year or two, and then, they start and restart their career and then get a starting job with the Falcons. So that doesn't necessarily mean that Darnold's in line to get some action. So I tend to agree with you, but that's interesting what you say about Lance. I've come to that. I had him. I traded him away. I had him. I drafted him in the first round in one of my leagues.
What'd you trade him for?
Oh, we're gonna have to wait. Hold on.
The deal right before it kind of came out that Brock Purdy was going to be the guy. I made a move for Trey Lance, and this is on a team that just won the championship. That's what I do. I win championships, but it's on a team that just won the championship. So I traded away Jameis Winston, a second round. It was the 211. Ended up being the 212. I traded away the 212, Jameis Winston, and Mike Evans. And I'm a big Mike Evans guy, right? But he's coming up on year 30. I was like, okay, let me go get Trey Lance, starting quarterback. If it works out, I got a guy that's 23 years old, 24. Trey Lance is 23 years old, I think. 23 years old for the rest of his career. So I was like, let me just make this move now. And I felt good about it at the time. I kind of wish I had Mike still.
All right. So buckle up here because this is definitely a big trade here. This is a salary cap dynasty league that has full IDP. So I'm giving you the contract too. So just beware. Okay. I traded away Trey Lance on his rookie deal, Ezekiel Elliott, Christian Kirk on a 2-year, really small amount of money deal, Kadarius Toney, Pat Freiermuth, Ogbonnia Okoronkwo, I don't know if you even know who he is, and a 2023 third-round pick, which was number 43 overall. I then received DJ Chark on a 1-year deal, high money that I ended up cutting, Josh Palmer on a 1-year deal, Chigozimo Okonkwo. It gets a little bit better. It doesn't sound so good. Then I got a 2023 first-round pick, number 5 overall, a 2023 second-round pick, number 21 overall, and a 2024 third. So, and it's a 16-team league.
So who'd you take with the 105 this year?
With the one, let's see.
Who was it, like Bryce, Quinn Johnston, Jason?
I don't even know if I kept it.
You didn't.
Oh,
you didn't keep it because then Paul was there, and then Paul took a receiver there. So
That's right.
That seems a little ugly to me. You basically for Chig and the 105, you gave a Pat Freiermuth, Kadarius Toney, and Trey Lance,
and Christian Kirk
on a good deal.
Yeah,
it might be an L.
That might be an L. Let's see. I ended up trading
because you got the 7th pick and took Will Anderson at the 7. I think that was your first.
Yeah. Okay. So then after
or no, that, did you trade up to 3?
No. Yeah. I think I might have. Yeah. This is where it gets.
Because I think you picked 3 and 7 in the first.
Let's see. Number 5 overall. Oh, what did I?
The details, right? When you start going back through, you're like, did that happen? Like, you have to kind of sometimes think about like the trail and the path to getting a certain pick or a certain player.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, we do so many trades in this league. It's outrageous.
Steve does a lot of wheeling and dealing as well.
Yeah,
that's
the only way to operate, man. If you ain't trying to get better, what's the point of playing these leagues, bro? That's like
Okay, let's see. Hold on. I know I traded the number 5 overall, but I'm trying to think what that was.
I always hate the leagues where it's like you get in the league and nobody does any deals at all. Like you send them out, they don't want to send counters back. They decline every deal. They don't ever want to send any out. I feel like that's the way to kill a league, like to kill the fun of a league, because then it's damn near just like best ball, right? Or you're just hoping that you have waivers and you hit on waivers. I like activity because you find value, right? We're talking about sleepers here in this episode and players that we can find value. Like I feel like everybody has different valuations on players. If you get over on me and you find value, cool. But I'm going to try to do the same thing to you and find value where I can. So if you don't trade in your league, change that immediately. Get some trades done, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we trade a ton in our this dynasty league that we do. It's pretty active. There's some teams that are less apt to trade or whatever, but there's plenty of other teams in our league that like to trade. We got a lot of player movement. So
okay, here we go. So I ended up trading this is on Bonsai, but I traded the number 5 overall pick, the number 9 overall pick, the number 17 overall pick, the number 42 overall pick, which is a 3rd round pick, number 45 overall pick, which is a 3rd round pick, and the number 123 overall pick, which is a 7th round pick. In return, I got safety Xavier Woods on a 2-year deal, pretty low money. The number 2 overall pick, the number 34 overall pick, which is a 3rd round pick, the number 111 pick, which is a 7th round pick, and then a 2024 first. And this team isn't so good. So I basically got and then I traded that number 2 pick after that. So, and then with the number 2 over this one you'll like. This one you'll like. I think you'll think I did good here. I ended up doing so you never knew what Lance ended up being when you asked me that question. So then I ended up trading the number 2 overall pick. Okay, and I ended up doing a 3-way trade. So it gets crazier. I traded the number 2 overall pick and the number 21 overall pick. and I basically netted Travis Etienne on top of it, who I then traded away. So then I ended up with the number 16th overall pick, the number 18th overall pick, number 20th overall pick, number 47th overall pick, number 50th overall pick, and a 2024 first. So anyways, long story short, now I have 3 2024 firsts. I traded up and got Will Anderson. So I'm in complete rebuild mode. A lot of the reason why I traded Tony and Freiermuth was because in our league, because it's a dynasty salary cap league, these guys are going to be up for contracts in 2 years. So basically in my mind, it's like, I can't compete right now. And so because I can't compete right now, let me trade these guys, because at the time that I could actually use them, I'm going to have to pay them. And they're going to want like a decent amount of money. So
see, the backwards thinking. This is why you guys need me on the show more often, because you got 2 years left. That's your window. You got to build, because guess what? By the time that the guys you draft in the first round of the 2024 league are good, that they're going to be up for contract in 2 years after that. It's the same thing. And then you're going to be through this vicious cycle of rebuild. So my advice for anybody in a dynasty league, always try to build win now within 2 years. You don't play for 4 years away. That's my advice.
I like it. If you saw my team last year, I was the number 1 overall team, and I traded for every. I know. I was the number 1 overall team.
Wanted to rebuild.
I literally traded for anybody who was possibly on a contract, and I couldn't keep them all, and so I had to joke and attest. I had to blow it up because I didn't know what to do.
It happens.
Yeah.
Right, Joe? What did you say?
Oh yeah, I mean, you were up against the cap. You had Travis Kelce, guys like Keenan Allen, Tyler Lockett. I mean,
all the free agents, I couldn't keep them all.
Yeah.
So then at that point, I was just like, you know what? Screw it. I'm just gonna blow it up.
Well, then your quarterback situation, especially if Trey Lance, doesn't start. I mean, you had Tom Brady, he retires, so
yeah, I was in a world of hurt. So, but anyways,
you get a pass.
Well, it's all right. I can take the L. I definitely made some questionable moves to try to get myself in position for future years. But there you have it. So at least we know what's going. We got the whole Lance thing going on. We'll see what happens with Lance. I hope he does well. The whole reason why we brought it up was because I got to the point where I was like, it's Purdy's the team. Purdy's the guy for that team. And so as a result, I'm like, you know what? I gotta move on from Lance, because I think he's not going to get the opportunity. Now, I think if he gets traded, I'm really interested in him. And I really like him in San Francisco, but I just don't know if they're going to give him the opportunity unless Purdy gets injured. That's my problem. So I felt like I had to move him.
Yeah, the thing is, though, if he gets traded, it's for a team that really needs a quarterback and probably wants to give him an opportunity to start. So that's the thing I could see with Trey Lance is like if he goes to a team, maybe Tennessee kind of falls out of favor with Will Levis and Malik Willis. They're like, hey, Levis, go to the Niners. We'll do a quarterback swap and you get a pick. Or there's a team that's out there contending with an older quarterback right now that wants to bring in Trey Lance. I could see that happening as well. So for me, I think that there's still value with the player in Dynasty, but I get if you're off Trey Lance and you think that for the next year or two, you're just like, hey, give me somebody else. I 100% get it.
Well, a tough part in our league too is just like the NFL, it's a fully guaranteed contract. So if he ends up just busting out, then I'm like, then he's actually worth no value at all. So if you want to get any value in the event that he just completely nosedive, like this is the time to trade him, or else his value could be like very little in dynasty leagues.
Right.
I feel like. All righty, enough about Lance, and who knows? You're making me get second doubts about this, so we need to move on. So, what's your guys' sleeper for the Seahawks?
With the Seahawks, it's a tough team because they have a lot of regularly established players. Like we know what the value is for DK Metcalf, for Tyler Lockett, Geno. It's like you can kind of predict this stuff, right? And I want to go if I was just to go with the flat out option, I love Kenneth Walker this year, but I'm going to go to a deep sleeper this year. This is a guy that's on zero people's radar. Zero. And I think that this guy has potential to be like a 10X type of player from his position. And I'm not saying that he's going to be some great starter or anything like this, but he did have a sizable role over the second half of last year and even into the playoff room. Colby Parkinson is a guy at tight end. Everybody, the starter is Noah Fant. He's entrenched as a starter. He's a young guy. And this team traded for him when they did the Russell Wilson deal, but he is also up on a contract year. Colby Parkinson was a guy who only had 300 yards last year. I think he only had 3 touchdowns last season, but he was a guy that's a big body in the red zone. And we typically say it takes tight ends a few years to get going. When I look at Geno Smith, they got the outside weapons. They got JSN now on the inside as well. It's like there's a need for a big red zone player when you have Kenneth Walker, who was using the red zone, but it was also at times injured last year. You draft Zach Charbonnet. He's a little bit bigger in the frame, but he's anticipated to be more of a pass catching type role for this team. Now enter Colby Parkinson, who we could see have maybe a little bit of an increase in role, especially if they plan on phasing out a Noah Fant by the end of the year. You're talking about a guy that can get 500 yards in a season, maybe 4 or 5 touchdowns. That's not bad for a back end tight end too on a random occasion or in your dynasty league. So I see potential with Colby Parkinson. I'm not saying he's going to be an elite tight end one asset, but he's a guy if you're looking for depth piece or you're in maybe a 16-man league looking for a tight end. He's a guy I would definitely keep my eye on.
Yeah, I think he's interesting. I actually picked him up, I think, on a flyer in our dynasty league last year, just because I was desperate at getting somebody at tight end there. But my sleeper for the Seattle Seahawks, is going to be Tyler Lockett. He's a guy kind of like your Brandon Ayuk sleeper. I feel like in ADP, everyone's going after DK Metcalf way before him, and he's really been the fantasy leader as far as points on this team. And Lockett has gotten 100 consecutive 100 target seasons as well. And I thought his production last year was going to potentially go down on the switch to Geno Smith. And, we were wrong again. And I just feel like this guy gets overlooked and he just keeps producing for fantasy. So he's Lockett's my sleeper for Seattle.
Yeah, Lockett is disrespected like every year and on year. He always tends to go lower than what he should, and he ends up performing really well. My sleeper, you're not going to like it, Justin, but my sleeper is Zach Charbonnet. For me, when it comes to Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker, you're seeing both of their values kind of deflate because it was a horrible situation. No one, from a fantasy football standpoint, no one wanted to see someone join that backfield with Kenneth Walker. So I've had my doubts on Kenneth Walker. He really took off after the Rashad Penny injury. I believe he was third in total carries after that happened. Well, now that Zach Charbonnet's in there, what does that mean? To me, I think Charbonnet is the best handcuff possible. And I actually am not surprised, and I'm believing that Charbonnet will outperform Walker this year. I think Charbonnet is an all-purpose back. Hey, you got to go hot takes, man. You got to go.
I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad.
I was talking. I was looking at Joe, not you. Shame on you both. No, but I like Charbonnet. Here's the thing. Seattle likes to use their running backs. They're going to go with the hot hand, and in my opinion, I think that Charbonnet is a more well-rounded running back. I think that, and if in the event that Walker gets injured, talk about Charbonnet possibly being a league winner, in my opinion. So just like Kenneth Walker was this past season for people who had him and no after the Rashad Penny injury. So I'm going to go with Charbonnet. I'm targeting him in every draft I can.
Yeah, I'm not mad at it. Like I said, I like Kenneth Walker. I think he was good value last year. But if you think that Zach Charbonnet has a chance to come in and overtake the role, this seems like more of a depth move for me, like a AJ Dillon in Green Bay type of situation where you don't want Kenneth Walker taking 25, 30 touches a game because he got hurt doing that last year. He got banged up. So I think this is more of like a complementary role. When you got 2 strong running backs, you really can't go wrong. Seattle's had a bunch of outcast running backs, did the DJ Dallases, the things like that right over the last few years. I think this is just to build some consistency there at the running back position.
Yeah, I agree with you, Justin. I'm a Kenneth Walker believer as well. I like him. I don't know about the hype that Charbonnet's getting. I don't think he's coming in overtaking Kenneth Walker. I think it would, take an injury like you mentioned, Steve. And I agree. I think the Charbonnet is just insurance policy for them and a depth piece, so they don't have to keep going with these like running back retreads.
Joe, what are you doing? You got to turn in your Michigan card, man. This is a go blue guy. You can't be going against your guy.
Well, he left, man. Went to UCLA. Like he couldn't even perform at the Michigan level, and we got Blake Corum now.
Get out of here. All right. Going over to the LA Rams. What is your sleeper for them?
Well, I'm going to stick at tight end, and Tyler Higbee's guy that we saw last year. You know, he was a little inconsistent, but when Cooper Kupp went down, and even before Cooper Kupp went down, this team didn't really have a viable number two when Allen Robinson was expected to be the number two for this team. He couldn't perform at that level. But when Van Jefferson was out, it was like Tyler Higbee had those games. He had some blow-up games. And at the tight end position, we're getting anything but consistency over the last few years. And so if you can get a guy that can maybe be probably his last year as the number two option on this team, you talk about Van Jefferson, you talk about Demarcus Robinson, Puka, like these aren't guys that are really established players where Tyler Higbee has a role and can provide kind of some of that stability as a secondary receiver for this team. So I think you get Tyler Higbee outside of the top 15. It's a good look for a team that probably is going to be throwing the football, being down a lot. He's a guy that could get you 8 to 10 receptions on any given week. We've seen it happen before. I like the volume potential with Tyler Higbee, and I think he's at a good draft spot right now.
Yeah, my sleeper for the Rams is actually going to be Matt Stafford. You know, I think he's a guy that keeps getting overlooked in drafts, but if he's able to, you know, stay healthy and, you know, his injuries aren't a thing, this is the worst Rams defense that he's had since he's been there. And I think the sheer passing volume and opportunities that he could have staying healthy, I think he could, you know, perform well in fantasy just because I think they're going to be passing a lot because they're going to be down in games. And as long as him and Cooper Kupp are on the field, he can produce for you.
Man, what happened to you? You just pull a 180? You're basically saying Stafford was going to be done. Now you're saying he's a sleeper? What happened?
Hey, he's going to play. I mean, at this point, it's looking like he's going to play. And him and McVay and Donald, those guys are sticking around for a reason. So while it was looking like, you know, he should retire and avoid the hits and the injuries. But if he wants to play and he's going to be out there, he's going to have opportunity to score you fantasy points.
Wow. You must have like hit upside the head or something. All of a sudden now you're thinking differently. I don't know what happened to you.
You gotta stay fluid in this fantasy situation, Steve. You know, things change, you get new news. You know, you gotta stay fluid, man.
Wow, man. News comes at you fast. All right. Well, my sleeper is gonna be Zach Evans. I really like Zach Evans. You know, he was drafted late, so he's not the greatest draft capital. But when it comes down to it, I can't trust the whole situation with Cam Akers. It was so weird last year. Him going in the doghouse and coming back. I don't have enough confidence that he's going to maintain that role. We saw even last year, it was Gerald Henderson. Then it was Cam Akers. And then Gerald Henderson got cut. Then Cam Akers, went in the doghouse. Then he came back. So I don't know what's going to happen in that running back room. I thought Kyron Williams was going to step up. And then, I think he started off the pup last year, never really got into a groove. I know they brought in Sonny Michel, which is sort of concerning to me, but he's a veteran running back and he's older. So for me, doing a dark throw, Zach Evans is talented. He was a former 5-star recruit, was heavily recruited. And so to me, it's like, I think he has the ability, just wasn't able to capitalize on it in college at TCU or Ole Miss. So I like the possibility of him. But this honestly, there's a lot of sleepers you can go in this team because it's really Cooper Kupp and Tyler Higbee. I mean, other than that, is it Puka Nacua? Is it Van Jefferson? Some people believe that he could take a next step forward. I agree. I don't think so either. So yeah, I mean, there's a couple of directions you can go. This is definitely a unique team.
Yeah, they have a bunch of outcasts. I'm sure somebody's going to catch us by surprise, right? A lot of people were expecting Tutu Atwell to do that last year. And it's like, like you mentioned, Kyron Williams. So everybody's kind of expecting the young guys on this team to step up. But it's like they have a nice, strong core of veterans. And that they relied on over the last couple of years, the Cam Akers, the Cooper Kupps, the Tyler Higbees. I think those are going to be a mainstay. If any of the young guys pop up, it'll be like week 15, week 16 by the time we see them.
So going over to our last team in the division, guys, the Arizona Cardinals. What is your sleeper for them?
Yeah, and so, I talked about tight end. I talked about some receivers, and I'm not going to go running back on this one. I'm going to go with the receiver, but I haven't talked about a rookie yet. So I'm going to talk about a rookie, Michael Wilson, a big body receiver out of Stanford. This is a guy, this team doesn't have DeAndre Hopkins anymore. What do they have on the team? A bunch of little guys, right? You're talking about the Greg Dortches, the Rondell Moores, the Hollywood Browns. They don't have a big body, and you look at the tight end position. We don't know, we're assuming that Trey McBride's going to take over at some point here in the season, whether it's week 1 or not. Zach Ertz is going to be probably on his way out, maybe even get cut before the season. But the run game isn't something that's going to be leaned on a lot. They're still going to have Kyler Murray out there, and when he's healthy, he's still going to be throwing the rock. And coming off of ACL, I expect him to be a lot less mobile than he was in years past, especially early on in the season. And what do you need? You need a guy that can go up and get it. Michael Wilson, to me, is that guy. And, everybody's talking about the top end of this draft and the first, 3 receivers off the board, 3 or 4 receivers, whatever it was, 4 receivers off the board in the first round. This is a guy that's a big body that can catch. And in a division where they're going to be down probably every game they play, the Cardinals are probably going to be down every game they play. They're going to need to be hoisting the ball up. Give me Michael Wilson. I like the sleeper potential there.
Yeah, Michael Wilson's a guy I like a lot as well. That makes a lot of sense. I'm actually going to go over to the running back position, and my sleeper is Keontae Ingram. Steve, this is a guy I've been, kind of targeting, especially at the end of the Scott Fishbowl draft here. James Conner has shown that he's just not able to stay healthy, and Keontae Ingram to me is the clear number 2 on this team. And we've seen that role kind of pay off for fantasy. Last year was, Benjamin, who came onto the scene and produced for you. So Keontae Ingram is that number 2 guy. And if, James Conner gets hurt again, I think he could, perform really well when given the chance here.
Well said, Joe. You and I have the same sleeper. I'm with you. I like Keontae Ingram a lot late in drafts. You've kind of convinced me over time that it's a really good sleeper. But
is that the first one we've all 3 agreed on? I'm shaking my head too. I like Keontae Ingram. We're all in agreement on one.
That's good. That's good. It's good. Good to have some agreement, some disagreement. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to Ingram, here's the thing. Like you said, can Connor stay healthy? And I'm not convinced. Even if Murray does come back, they may not want him to start throwing 30, 40 times. They might want to ease him in. So they might want to – I agree with you. I think they're going to be down a lot. But I could see them, really depending on the run game. So they're going to have to spill Connor somehow, and I think he's probably the best option. So I like Ingram a lot. I think he's a good sleeper.
Yeah, and I know it's easy to forget, but Connor does not have the best injury history out of all running backs. So I can very well see a world where Keontae Ingram comes in there, and especially later on in the year, talking week 13, week 14, when fantasy playoffs are coming around, he could be a guy that'd be very valuable to your roster.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, guys. So we're gonna talk about busts. I want you guys to give me one bust. You can go on a little bit of a rant. You can just say who the bust is. But I want one bust for one of the teams in the division. Who do you got as a fantasy football bust?
I hate to say it, and I don't necessarily think it's a full bust. It's just not at ADP. DK Metcalf seems like potential bust territory. Even though he's got the talent, we know he's going to score the touchdowns. You got to take him right now as a middle wide receiver too, and he just doesn't carry the ceiling. Right now, it's a lot of the name value when it comes to DK Metcalf. He's been a mainstay in our lineups for years, but when the team invests a first-round pick in another receiver, he's been at times, he's the questionable guy, right? That always plays questionable on the questionable tag. They also invested in another running back. And we saw Geno Smith in the second half of last year kind of revert back to the old Geno Smith. That first half of the year, he was playing at such an incredible level. It's easy to forget what that team likes to do in the second half of football seasons, which is run the football, but then also the level of play wasn't the same Geno that we saw early on. So I think DK Metcalf is a solid player, but he's going to be more of like a high-end wide receiver 3, very inconsistent at times this year, especially because this team's going to be able to spread the rock around.
Yeah, I think that definitely makes sense. For me, I'm going to go with Cam Akers, and Steve alluded to it earlier, just the crowded running back room in Los Angeles. But, I've just seen, people buzzing about him. And I think it's, they're taking the last 3 games from last year and thinking of the potential of what he could be this year. He's a guy that I'm going to avoid.
Yeah, we've been doing busts now for each division. And I got to tell you, I really don't like the NFC West. I could give you a bust for each team. But I kind of alluded to Kenneth Walker, and he's one of my favorite busts, so I won't talk about him. My bust is going to be, and you might not like it, Justin, but my bust, Deebo Samuel. Ever since Christian McCaffrey came in the fold, that year where he was really valuable, he was getting those carries as well as the receptions. If Purdy is in, Purdy relied more on George Kittle. I mean, George Kittle was unbelievable when Purdy was the quarterback. As well as Brandon Ayuk. He really wasn't targeting Deebo Samuel all that much. I know Deebo has even came out publicly and has said that he was bad last year and he's not going to make that happen this upcoming year. But with the quarterback instability and just because of the name, you're talking about the name value with DK Metcalf, I sort of feel the same way with Debo. And when it comes to Debo, I think we've seen the best from him. I think he's, that was his ceiling, and I don't know if we're ever going to see it again. So for me, he's my bust.
Yeah, I'm not on there with you with Debo. I think Debo has a bounce back year, but I think you made a good point though. And one of the things I think it's easy to forget about is during contract years, we see a lot of elevated play. And in the first year that they get that bag, it tends to drop off. And we might've seen that with Debo Samuel last year.
Definitely. I could definitely see that. I definitely am a firm believer that in a contract year, guys are going to try to ball out so they can cash out. So I'm with you 100%.
And after they get the bread, they're going to the clubs, they drinking, celebrating with the family. Like, it's a whole different vibe.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's interesting, Steve. I thought about bringing up Debo's name, but then I just saw it, how he sat down with Kyle Shanahan and looked at his film from last year and how much he disliked it and how much he's out to prove to change it. I just didn't feel comfortable going with it, but kudos to you for being that bold and taking him as the bust.
Maybe I'm just burned from last year when I drafted him, and now I'm salty. So now I'm like, I can't bring him back.
Facts over films. Would never play fantasy with your emotions.
Very true. very, very true. So, that concludes our show, breaking down the NFC West division for the upcoming NFL season. Before we sign off, Justin, thanks so much for coming on the show. Where can others find your great work?
Yeah, you can find me on any social media platform, Justin Henry with a 3 instead of an E. And then on YouTube, it's Justin Henry Show. Weekdays, Monday through Friday at 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 o'clock Eastern time. I do mock drafts, talking sleepers, breakouts. And then during the course of the season, it's a daily show talking about you guys with the waiver wire pickups, trades, start sits, you name it.
Yeah, if you don't follow or subscribe to Justin's channel, you need to do so now. You got to check out what he's doing. He's doing great stuff. We are so thankful that he was able to come on with us today. If you enjoyed this video, we are a new channel, so we can ask for your support. We greatly appreciate it. You can like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can follow us at Apple and Spotify podcasts. Go ahead and put a comment below. We had some hot takes on this episode. So what are your thoughts? What do you think is going to happen in the NFC West? How's the division going to shake out? We'd like to hear what you think. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time.